but it caused mass panic, and of course has become a major part of history. Orson Welles and the planet Mars. We'll talk more about Mars, but let's get at the thing that's probably bothering many of us. Because on August 6th of 1996, from the headquarters of NASA in Washington, D.C., release number 96-159, released at 3:45 in the afternoon, was a statement from Daniel S. Golden, the NASA administrator. Now, I want to point out this is not some tabloid writer. This is not a tabloid you'd pick up the checkout stand of your newspaper. This is not just an announcement by some spokesman. This is a press release by the head of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It's my private suspicion it's a release that he's going to live to regret. But in any case, it's brief, let me quote it for you. NASA has made a startling discovery that points to the possibility that a primitive form of microscopic life may have existed on Mars more than 3 billion years ago. The research is based on sophisticated examination of an ancient Martian meteorite which landed on the Earth some 13,000 years ago. The evidence is exciting, even compelling, but not conclusive. It is a discovery that demands further scientific investigation. NASA is ready to assist the process of rigorous scientific investigation and lively scientific debate that will follow this discovery, and indeed has already started. I want everyone to understand that we're not talking about little green men. These are extremely small single-cell structures that somewhat resemble bacteria on Earth. There is no evidence or suggestion that any higher life form ever existed on Mars. The NASA scientists and researchers who made this discovery will be available at a news conference tomorrow to discuss their findings, and they will outline the step-by-step detective story that explains how the meteorite arrived here from Mars, how they set about looking for evidence of long-ago life in this ancient rock. They will also release some fascinating images documenting the research, which indeed they did. Now, what's behind this release? A group of 9 researchers from 5 different institutions, led by NASA researcher David S. McKay of the Johnson Space Center, published a study that claimed evidence for life on Mars, which created quite a stir. This publication was scheduled to be released in Science magazine on August 16th. But news started to leak out, and so Science magazine finally released it earlier. Now, they argued that the best explanation of 3 different minerals and organic residue and bacteria-like structures found together in a meteorite that, while found in Antarctica, is reported to have been blasted from the surface of Mars, and that it represents ancient life on the famed planet. Now, to get a little perspective here of what we're dealing with, the scientists were working with a slice of the meteorite that is 1/500th of a hair in diameter. You're talking itty-bitty stuff here, okay? Now, the laser analyzers help the researchers detect organic chemicals called PAHs. The initial is PAH, for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs is the short slang for it, in the meteorite. See, when living material degrades, it leaves behind polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And it's a very polite term. You can tell what it sounds like, okay? PAHs are common in the universe, but they're not always linked to living material. The conclusions assume that PAHs are indigenous to the meteorite rather than from earthly contaminants. That's another issue. Compounds are ubiquitous on the Earth. They're all over the place. They're formed not only by the degradation of living things, but they also by power plants, and they also follow automobile combustion. And I don't see any press release saying they've proven that there are cars on Mars, by the way.
Mysteries of the Planet Mars is the series that Chuck is just starting today here on the program. And whether or not there's life on the planet Mars and all of the other questions and things that tie in with the scriptures themselves and history. It's available here from Koinonia House as a 2-tape set complete with extensive study notes on the subject. You simply have to call us and order it at 1-800-KHOUSE-1, 1-800-KHOUSE, and the number 1. For first-time subscribers, we offer you a year's free subscription to our monthly news journal, The Personal Update. All you have to do is call the toll-free number, 1-800-KHOUSE-1. Don't forget, our website is khouse.org. This program is archived there 24 hours a day. And you can also subscribe to our e-news. We come up with a free weekly e-news bulletin that you can get by email simply by subscribing at khouse.org. You know, I I thought that polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons were things they put in air fresheners or something.
The so-called pause, as we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the interesting things about this whole subject is that it challenges our reasoning ability to discern these elaborate conjectures that are built upon other conjectures and build this, house of cards, if you will, in contrast to just basic reasoning about what we really do know, and then also to lay all this against the fabric of truth that we have in the Bible. And as the series unfolds in the next few days, I think that we're in for some startling discoveries, not just about Mars, but also about what the Bible really says about these ancient periods. So be with us tomorrow as we continue this series. I think you'll find it extremely provocative.
The mysteries of the planet Mars. Is there life on Mars? Did life come from Mars? Does Mars play a history in the history of the Earth other than just mythology? That's the series Chuck is doing right now. And, I always tell people, Chuck, if you look up in the evening sky, you can always tell planets because they don't twinkle. Mm-hmm. They don't. They're a wider angular thing.
If you live in L.A., they twinkle.
If you live in L.A., you don't see them. I mean, well, that's not true. Actually, even on star nights, you could see Jupiter shining brightly through the. But
it really is. It's amazing. As a guy that lived in L.A., when you get out in the desert, or if you get up in mountains and so forth, to realize what a real night sky is. Another place that this is startling is if you're at sea on a clear night. You just can't believe the heavens. It's really quite.
You can see the background scatter of light too. That's there that you can't see from the city.
And it's just really wonderful. But this whole subject too of the life, the so-called discoveries by NASA, life on the rock that was presumably on Mars. It's interesting that good scientists obviously have already gone on record with great skepticism about all of those rather self-serving conjectures that have been promoted by the administration. But you can expect, as money continues to be spent in this area, this quest to prove that there's life in outer space. It's interesting that the more they look, they've never been able to substantiate that, and yet we continue to spend money on that quest. Encouraged by Carl Sagan and similar types, that this is somehow, this all begs, you see, a whole view, a world view.
And by the way, they're looking for organized data too, not random chance.
Yes,
okay.
And organized in a very special way, because if it's random, of course, it's noise, and if it's periodic, it can have natural sources. Right. That's why the prime number theme is one of the examples that Carl Sagan exploited in his novel and so forth. But the whole idea of information. In fact, that the information science is the key to all of this, whether you're talking about the origin of life or whether you're talking about understanding the nature of reality. It's a digital reality, and that's something that they're still trying to chew on. But this whole issue of the planet Mars raises fundamental questions about reality and fundamental questions about our understanding of history. Is uniformitarianism really valid? This idea that things have always continued as they always have. All you have to do is look at the evidence, and clearly the solar system has been a rough neighborhood. Things have been beat up pretty well. The catastrophism models, who have been generally rejected by the establishment, are the ones that increasingly are being accepted by thinkers and that look at the evidence. And this planet Mars subject is one of them, and it impacts, pun intended, our understanding of Joshua chapter 10 and the rest, which of course we'll be getting into.
All right, mysteries of the planet Mars.
If I said that these objects were suggestive of a car somewhere on Mars, you'd laugh at me. And yet, an automobile engine is vastly simpler than even the simplest living cell. One of the things that may startle you, unless you've done some reading in microbiology, there is no such thing as a simple cell. The simplest cell we know is like a gigantic factory that's more complex than you can conceive of. There are master records that are copied to provide the instruction to all the machinery. The machinery changes form as it needs to. There are provisions to correct errors, and on it goes. The model of the living cell is staggering in its complexity. And yet it's interesting, the concept that a car might be on Mars is absurd, and yet the car is more complex than what they're assuming is on Mars. But let's go on. By the way, something you should understand, meteoriticists, people who study meteors, have been misled by contamination before. In the 1960s, a few researchers reported that a meteorite had yielded organic matter that appeared to have been biologically produced, along with microscopic organized elements, presumably fossils of the organisms that produce the organic matter. And after heated polemics and lots of controversy, it all turned out to be earthly contamination, including degraded ragweed pollen masquerading as alien life forms. And because of that bad experience, many scientists today are, just to give them credit, they are very, very cautious. They don't want to be burned again. And as they read these results, the press releases and internet correspondence is full of many very competent people saying, time out, guys, not so. But it caused mass panic, and of course has become a major part of history. Orson Welles and the planet Mars. We'll talk more about Mars, but let's get at the thing that's probably bothering many of us. Because on August 6th, Golden, the NASA administrator, now I want to point out this is not some tabloid writer, this is not a tabloid you'd pick up the checkout stand of your newspaper, this is not just an announcement by some spokesman, this is a press release by the head of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It's my private suspicion it's a release that he's going to live to regret. But in any case, it's brief, let me quote it for you. NASA has made a startling discovery that points 6th of 1996 from the headquarters of NASA in Washington, D.C., release number 96-159, released at 3:45 in the afternoon, was a statement from Daniel S. to the possibility that a primitive form of microscopic life may have existed on Mars more than 3 billion years ago. The research is based on sophisticated examination of an ancient Martian meteorite